The first 11 years of my marriage, after Pascal and I were married, were wonderful years, that we experienced loving each other, having the children, sharing them, enjoying them. And after then, something went wrong. My husband started drinking very heavily and became an alcoholic. I started displaying my anger and bitterness in that relationship by withholding. I grew bitter and frustrated and in a sense wanting to lash back. I always brought up the things to my husband that he had done over and over and over. So there was, in a sense, no living it down. So it was just like a vicious cycle. We had one vehicle that we used to work, and he would frequently drop me off, and many times I was just there. And I had no place to go. My children were at home alone, and I was at work, and I had no way because my husband did not come to pick me up. And I would just walk to the closest hotel that was available to me and spend the night there. I would frequently call the children and say, "Sorry kids, mom's not going to be home tonight. I have no way home. But I love you, and just go to bed," And that was just so painful. It was an experience that it's undescribable to know that you can't even get home from work just to even kiss your children goodnight. I thought that the answer to my problems was divorcing my husband. I asked my husband to leave. When he left, we had one vehicle that we were using, and at that point there was a need for a second vehicle for one of us. So I purchased a vehicle from a friend, and when I picked up the vehicle that evening, the dial was set on a Christian radio, 105.7 FM in Houston, Texas. Normally, I do not listen to Christian radio, but for some reason unknown to me at that time, I reached over to turn off the dial on the Christian radio, and my hands just could not make it there. And I left that Christian radio on. The next morning, going to work, Nancy Lee DeMoss came on. Her program spoke of forgiveness, total forgiveness, and submission to your husband in a family. That really touched my heart. I could not stop thinking about that all day long. That just went around and around and around in my mind. Divorce at that point was apparent to me was not the answer, but God was. After I asked my husband to leave, he left. One night he called and said he was very sick. And I asked him, "Why don't you call 911? So in God's wisdom, he did. And I later learned that at that time, when he had called me, he had a heart attack. He had ended up in the hospital. After that happened, God had already touched my life in such a tremendous way that it could never be the same. When I got there, Pascal was extremely restless, and there were many tubes and IVs and you name it that was attached to him. And the Holy Spirit asked me to just go and speak to him and let him know that he should come home and that I loved him. When I made a decision to forgive, when my heart was convicted, I despised my husband. I did not even want him to touch me. I wanted no parts of that relationship. And I prayed to God and I said, "God, you know my heart and you know my feelings towards my husband. I do not like him. I do not love him. But I said, Lord, one thing I do know, that you, Lord, you are love yourself. And I am going to ask you, Lord, to just let your love flow through me When he came home, I went to him and I said, Pascal, I just want you to know today that I have forgiven you for everything that has occurred in a relationship from the beginning. After I forgave Pascal and asked him to forgive me, it's as though a total change occurred in a relationship. Pascal no longer had a need for drinking. Pascal became the type of husband that God wanted him to be. We had many candlelight dinners together. There was many sweet cards expressing his love and admiration and friendship together. It was a total and complete change in our relationship. On a Tuesday morning around 4 a.m., my husband woke me up and he said, Lorna, I just want to love you. I just want to let you know that a man should love his wife with all his heart, with all his soul, and with all his mind. And I want you to know at this time that I love you that way. Around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I was called at work and told that I needed to get home. When I got home, my son was at the door and he said, Mom, the ambulance just took Dad and I think we've lost him. I said, Lord, when I prayed on Sunday, I asked you for healing, but you have gone one step further. You've given Pascal not just healing on earth, but eternal healing, life with you. I did not know that when God restored our marriage, that we only had 4 months together. The children remember those 4 months of their lives.
It was actually like a loving marriage, like the kind you'd see on TV or something, And I was able to experience something like that, even if it was for a brief period. I now know what it's like, When my mom offered my dad the forgiveness, unconditionally, and we all saw that, I was able to release a lot of the, things that I had to.
When we forgive, we release that burden. You have a victory, you have a freedom, you're loose, and you're not anxious and frustrated, because that burden is gone. And that's, God speaks of that forgiveness, and once you forgive, you're free. You are free to serve God. You're free to really and truly be who God intends for you to be.